Donald Trump is declaring war on the impeachment investigation, calling it an illegitimate effort to overturn the results of the 2016 election and pushing his standoff with Congress to the brink of a constitutional crisis. In a letter last night, the White House's lead lawyer told congressional investigators that President Trump and his administration cannot participate in the inquiry, calling it, quote, partisan, unconstitutional, as well as a violation of due process and the separation of powers. The letter came just a few hours after the White House stopped U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, who was considered a key witness in the impeachment inquiry, from testifying. Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani also said he plans to ignore subpoenas for documents and his testimony before investigators. And Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and AG William Barr have also failed to comply with orders from Congress, with the Attorney General actually being held in contempt. While Democrats are beside themselves, Republicans appear content.
The president is obstructing Congress from getting the facts that we need. That is an abuse of power for him to act in this way. And that is one of the reasons that we have an impeachment inquiry.
The failure to produce this witness, the failure to produce these documents, we consider yet additional strong evidence of obstruction.
What we see in this impeachment is a kangaroo court.
It was described today as a kangaroo court, and that's probably being nice.
So, where do we go from here? Joining me are former Democratic Congressman Michael Capuano, now Public Affairs Director at Foley Lardner LLP. Good to see you, Congressman. Former Republican Governor Jane Swift, now the president of the education nonprofit Learn Launch. Governor, it's good to see you, too. Can we start at the end? Has the president committed an impeachable offense as far as you're concerned?
So I think that what's important for folks to realize is there appears to be enough evidence to proceed with an impeachment inquiry, but that's really the equivalent of an indictment to
if
determine,
they impeach, yeah.
Right, but to determine whether or not they should find him guilty of that. I think the members of Congress need to act soberly and pursue the facts, which I think we'll get to some of the challenges in doing that.
Where does a non-member of Congress think things are?
So I have not seen all of the facts, but certainly some of the actions that have been reported and alleged by the whistleblower trouble me greatly.
But not to the point where you're willing to say he should be impeached or removed from office.
I think that the Congress seems to be moving forward and investigating these in a responsible way, and I hope that all members of Congress will approach this with really the type of discipline and sober analysis required of a momentous, really, constitutional responsibility.
Has he committed an impeachable offense?
I think he's pretty much done it pretty much every day for the last several weeks, if not before that. At the same time, I do think that I'm not on the jury, so to speak, so I do think you have to go through the process. I certainly think that this type of an effort, the complete stonewalling of any cooperation at all, does become an impeachable offense. And honestly, up until now, I haven't been exactly sure that some of this stuff is a removable offense. Right. And again, impeachment is different than removal from office. An absolute refusal to cooperate with a legitimate investigation, to me, in and of itself, might become an offense that should be worthy of removal. So
his refusal to cooperate, now the ball's back in the laps of your former Democratic colleagues. What do they do about this?
Well, there's lots of things they can do, but again, a lot of it depends on the Attorney General. And of course, this Attorney General has shown no willingness at all to be an independent player. And then some of it will end up in the courts, and we'll have to see what it does, because it'll probably end up at the Supreme Court, no matter what happens, as it probably should. We'll have to see how independent they are.
But today, in the 24 hours, at least as of taping time, since the president gave the middle finger essentially to Congress, we have not heard a peep from the Democrats except the same rhetoric.
Well, I think it's hard to tell, but I mean, I would assume that they're trying to be professional and non-responsive to this kind of what I would consider to be childish and inappropriate behavior. And again, in the final analysis, the refusal to cooperate will be taken into consideration as far as guilt or innocence, or whether the Congress acts. And it should be. Again, there's degrees of not cooperating, and there's certainly requirements of subpoenas and the like. But to sit there and say no matter what you do, no matter who you ask, no matter what you ask, nobody in my administration is going to do anything to answer any questions, If that's not darn close to un-American, unconstitutional, I don't know what is.
You know, Governor Swift, you talked about all members of Congress, soberly, et cetera, all of what you said a minute ago. Where are the Republicans? I mean, there are a handful of Republicans, maybe a few more than a handful, have expressed concern, those sort of things. I don't know if there's one. I don't know if there are two Republicans who have said we should at least investigate. There should at least be an inquiry. Does he have to shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, as he said?
I think there have been a handful of Republicans who have said that. I think Ben Sasse of Nebraska has come close to saying that.
Maybe close. Well, Mitt Romney, again.
I was going to say Mitt Romney.
Here's his tweet. By all appearances, the president's brazen and unprecedented appeal to China and Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden is wrong and appalling. And what does one do about that?
So I think that, and this doesn't make for great and scintillating television, but this is our Constitution, and this is extremely important. And if you go back and look, the time at which members of his own party began to turn on the president during Watergate and Nixon were later than the point that we're at right now.
That is true.
And so I think from a historical standpoint, and precedent and historical precedent is very important when you're handling something of this import. There is time, I believe, for members of both parties to continue to act in a way that this moment requires.
You know, by the way, I am, as the former Democratic congressman knows, I am appalled by hypocrisy on both sides of the aisle. Trey Gowdy, former Republican member of Congress, is now one of the lawyers working for the president. Here's the same Trey Gowdy at a Benghazi hearing in 2012. Listen to what the congressman had to say.
The notion that you can withhold information and documents from Congress, no matter whether you're the party in power or not in power, is wrong. Respect for the rule of law must mean something irrespective of the vicissitudes of political cycles.
It's like an SNL routine. I mean, it really is.
I think there's another one. I'll do some research for you. Lindsey Graham that I saw on Twitter. Exactly.
I would say that too.
The same thing. So hopefully, as this progresses, and I agree with the congressman, I think as the process moves forward, I think this will end up in the courts. And by the way, as did many of the issues around presidential rights to withhold evidence, did around Watergate. And I actually have some confidence, based on how the Supreme Court has acted in the past, that that's the appropriate other place for these issues between the two branches of government, the legislative branch and the executive branch, to be worked out.
You're being more respectful of Congress than I will be for two reasons. One, there is a letter, as we've all read, from the whistleblower, much of which has been confirmed by the president himself, by the way, not by third-party sources, but by his own statements. Plus, we may not get anything more from all the president's men. If, in fact, he continues to just say no, all we're going to hear is what we've heard, a whistleblower, the president's own words, those kind of things. There are new polls. I'm sure you've seen them. Yesterday, Washington Post, 49% of Americans, including 28% of Republicans, 4 times as many as 2 months ago, supported removal from office of the president, 50% in a Politico poll today. My much more crass analysis of this, it's not like the Republicans are waiting to hear more evidence. They're waiting to see if seats in the Senate that are held by Republicans could go Democratic, and Mitch McConnell loses his majority, then all of a sudden they'll have an epiphany. Is that too cynical?
Well, I have become more cynical as well, but I think this is a time where we should hope that the people that we've elected rise to the moment and give them the opportunity to do it, because these are extremely weighty matters. And while I agree, the evidence that's presented may well be exactly what was presented in the whistleblower's case. If the same thing happened and I had evidence that against you, right, that would lead to you being indicted, and I printed it in the Boston Globe and it all turned out to be true, you still wouldn't go to jail until there was an indictment and a trial, and the evidence was presented with all the rules of law between the jury and your peers.
Yes, that is true. So, but if it turns out that indictment or that charge happened, and I stood up in front of a microphone and admitted that I did it in front of those microphones, I assume people would say...
There would actually be, I believe, are you a lawyer? I'm not a lawyer. I actually think you could have that not be admissible because of self-incrimination or something.
But it's not a criminal trial. This is American politics.
But I will say, we need process. It is extremely important. And I think one of the problems, frankly, of why we are at this time is because there are some members of both parties who have been so excessively partisan for so long that the word impeachment has lost its power, because some people called for impeachment the day after this president was elected, and so the word stopped to have meaning.
You supported an inquiry when you were running for re-election, didn't you?
I did.
Right on this set.
I did it 2017. I did, and I think it's the right thing to do. I actually think what the president is doing now is actually going to speed the process up, because if you can't get facts and you have to wait 6 months for a court to even look at it, at some point you're just going to say, I got to make a decision on this thing. Well, based on what we know at the moment. And right now, what they know at the moment, they do know some facts. They have a lot of media reporting, which is not what you want to do. But again, it's not a court of law. They don't have to listen to the rules of evidence, and they will base it on what they know.
Do you worry about if this logjam continues, and this is a straight party vote in the House, which will probably impeach him, and a straight party vote in the Senate on a motion to dismiss? Do you worry about the impact on this country? Forget Donald Trump. You both do.
The country's divided right now, and I keep looking for the Elliot Richardsons and the Sam Irvins and the Howard Bakers of the Republican Party.
Howard Baker was meeting with President Nixon in private, by the way.
And guess what? He's the one who was least credited with having convinced him to leave.
He's among them. That's true.
Now, again, I don't know that we have them yet. We have a few that have spoken out, and I think the governor's right that it's a little not early in the process, but the process still has more time to play out. I'm not at all convinced. I'm not optimistic that there will be many more of elected leadership in the Republican Party that will do it. I want to be proven wrong for the reasons you suggest. If this guy has done the things he's been accused of, and it certainly seems like he has, but if they can prove it, they feel comfortable with it, he should be removed from office.
I got to move quickly.
Yeah,
yes,
but not
please.
only that, it's even more important that we have some semblance of fairness in this process and bring down the rhetoric in case there is a partisan vote, because public opinion will matter for our future a great deal.
Before you leave, very quickly, another subject. Last night on PBS, someone suggested there might be another candidate on the Democratic side. Here she is.
You know, it truly is remarkable how obsessed he remains with me, but this latest tweet is, so typical of him. So maybe there does need to be a rematch. I mean, obviously, I can beat him again.
The tweet that she was referring to for the president, I think that crooked Hillary Clinton should try to enter the race or try and steal it away from her uber-left Elizabeth Warren. A lot of reports have said she was joking. I didn't think she was joking. Did you, quickly?
It was not. The joke didn't land well if she was.
How about it?
I have no idea if she was joking. I don't see that as a real possibility.
Mike Capuano, Congressman, thanks so much. Governor Swift, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.